Well, Ferrari first, because they were 1-2 in both sessions today. Really impressive. I did sort of hint that this might happen in the live stream we did after Monza, looking ahead to the Marina Bay race here at Singapore, and so it proved. The straights are a little bit longer in Sector 3 now. They've taken out some of the tight corners under the grandstands, which can only help Ferrari, as I said in the live stream. But my thoughts were more based on how good the Ferraris were on the straight at Zandvoort. They weren't quick over the lap. It was a high downforce circuit, and there's a lot of sort of long radius corners there where they were not very good, but they were quick on the straight with downforce, with maximum downforce on the car, maximum downforce here. But that's really helping them because the straights are longer, there are more of them, and they look really good. And the other point about Singapore is that, like most street circuits, it has a lot of stop-go, hard braking, 90-degree left, on the power again. Obviously within that there are differences between the drivers, differences between the cars, but in terms of a Ferrari, quick on the straight, good brakes, get the car in, get it out. It's a perfect car for a driver like Carlos Sainz with his slightly wider turn-ins and the rhythm he can get into. I think Charles, there are not many corners around here where Charles can be a Charles or a Max can be a Max, and that showed a little bit today. I think it's just a really good circuit for a point and squirt car that is quick on the straight, and that's what the Ferrari is. That's not to detract from them, and it's certainly not to detract from the job that Carlos Sainz is doing right now. As I've said, he's found this sort of groove over the last 4 or 5 races now. Looks really good in the car. Difficult for Charles Leclerc to beat him. Yeah, he was slightly quicker in FP1 by a tenth or two. In FP2 though, it was Carlos Sainz who was just quicker than Charles Leclerc. Now the amount by which he was quicker was insignificant, a hundredth of a second, whatever. It's the fact that he was at the top of the times. Again, that's what we'll be getting to Charles Leclerc. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes into Saturday, how he handles qualifying, if he makes any mistakes, if he's feeling the pressure, just to watch that. And here's a race for him to win. But he's got to beat Carlos Sainz, and that's not going to be easy. So that's a really interesting intra-team battle to be taking into Singapore. Quite a lot of people have been saying, do we think that it was correct the way Charles was driving the closing laps at Monza and team orders and so forth? And I think it was okay. I think Ferrari handled it well, and bear in mind Carlos didn't spend much time in with DRS at Monza in the race, and there was Charles with DRS behind Carlos, and that only, I think, amplifies the quality of the work that Carlos Sainz was doing. So it'll be interesting tomorrow. Obviously it'll be a fight for the pole, because if it's between those two, and it will be a real fight, because Charles will definitely want to be on the pole here. He won't want to be on the front row on the dirty side of the grid on a street circuit with Carlos on the pole. But at the moment, Carlos driving beautifully, and kind of and other little details. He was the first out in FP2 with fuel in the car, and he got one more lap in the long run. It's those little details that begin to add up. And so all I can say is watch this space for tomorrow to see how Charles Leclerc reacts. That's going to be one of the interesting things. The other thing, of course, is how Red Bull react to what was, well, I was going to say what was a very difficult Friday for them. But look at this. I think I'm allowed to put this up. This is the press release they put out. I shouldn't really do it because obviously somebody forgot to delete the big quote from Monza. So it makes quite interesting reading. Red Bull's so used, I suppose, to, I don't know what they're used to, just things just happening, that when they're not going well, things kind of go haywire in every department. Anyway, we shouldn't go on about that because we all make mistakes. But yeah, Red Bull struggling here. Christian Horner is saying, well, you know, we're not very good on 90-degree corners. Well, what does that mean? We're not very good on being very quick on the straight, having good brakes, and then getting the power on and getting out of the corner. Well, why not? I mean, it's a really good car, the Red Bull. So I can understand the Ferrari would be near them, but there are still plenty of corners here. Change of direction, nimble corners in the tight bits, and that very, very fast last left-hander, which is, this year, is a really, really impressive corner. It's always been an impressive corner, but you've got to be absolutely spot on this year with the way the cars are. It's really quick, that last corner, and we saw a few drivers that get slightly crossed up. I think Logan Sargent was one of them, just didn't get the turn in quite right and a bit too much steering, and the car went off. And we saw some, it didn't go off, but I mean, he had a big moment, and we saw some other drivers also in trouble there. That should be a great corner for Red Bull. Okay, what they're saying is that they don't feel, the two drivers don't feel if they've got massive grip at the rear. So that would suggest that they're running, possibly because the circuit's a street circuit and it's quite bumpy, maybe they started with conservative ride heights and they're going to go to a lower ride height tomorrow, and that of course will mean a spring change, and that's probably why they didn't do that during today, although they would have had time to have done it between the two sessions. Or it could mean they just different rear wing. I mean, in theory they should be running maximum downforce here. So, and in theory Red Bull would know what wing to run on that, and they would have that maximum downforce. So I would imagine it's a ride height thing. So we'll see a little bit as it was in Brazil when they were not quick last year. But I thought the other interesting thing is that despite the car not being very good, Red Bull still stuck to their discipline of, okay, well, we're not quick on the red tyre, on the light fuel run, but despite that, they nonetheless stuck with their program and put fuel in the car and did their long runs. And that just shows the quality of the team. Even though this has probably been the worst Friday they've had all year, they still went for it with the fuel runs. And that's really impressive, I think, to see that. That's just typical of Red Bull, of how good they are. Amongst the others, it's very, very close. I mean, on this sort of circuit, which is a little bit, you know, bump here, bump there, brake late here, power on there, any team with decent drivers is going to do a lap time around here and is going to get a quality lap. Some teams obviously have a little bit more downforce than others. McLaren looked really good with Lando Norris, updates on his car, not on the Oscar Piastri car, and Lando making good use of that, looking really good whenever he went out, but always running out of sync in terms of tyres on the long runs particularly, so it's difficult to make a direct comparison. Fernando Alonso also looking good in the Aston Martin, his sort of circuit for sure, particularly if he breaks a front wing end plate or two at the start. I'm only joking, but very good in the Aston Martin, but really quick on the soft tyre, so again, direct comparisons not that easy. And Mercedes not far away as well. George Russell really good. Lewis Hamilton looking good as well. Not quite as sharp as George, who was, I mean, George was another guy that had a massive moment through that left-hander, that quick left-hander, the last corner of the lap. And unbelievable car control he had. Yeah, so Mercedes are right in the game as well. Assuming this doesn't, as the track picks up grip, it doesn't become one of those races where, and putting weather to one side as well, of course, it doesn't become one of those races where, again, tyre management becomes a thing. But all things being equal, Mercedes should be looking at a really good result here as well. So as we normally do on a Friday, in order to get some sort of logic to what's going on, let's have a look at what they did on the fuel runs in both sessions. FP1, they didn't do many laps, any of them, because of a pesky monitor lizard that was basking in the sun, very annoyed to have these incredibly irritating, noisy Formula One cars interrupting its sleep. So Formula One drove around it, I'm very pleased to say. I mean, we treated it very well, I think. They treated it very well. But that meant that there were quite a lot of yellows in the back end of FP1 when everyone was trying to do fuel runs. So you can see there, Fernando Alonso, quickest in the Aston Martin, 37.4. On the soft tyre, Lando, the only other guy to run fuel with the soft tyre, did a 37.8. So yeah, that would give Aston Martin a lot of confidence. Classic Fernando Alonso, and he did another 37.4 at the end of that run as well. I say not many laps. It's quite a long lap here, of course. So a 5 or 6 lap run takes quite a long time. So you're not going to see that, and that's how impressive. You'll see how impressive Ferrari were in FP2, how many laps they got in. So Fernando 37.8, 37.4, 39.2, 37.5, 37.4, really good run on the soft tyre, remember. Lando Norris on the soft, 37.8, only one lap in the 37s, but low 38s, looking pretty good. As I say, he's got an upgrade that, presumably a floor upgrade, mainly, which Oscar doesn't have. So basically Oscar as a rookie around Singapore did a pretty good job today, as did Liam Lawson, I think. Then let's have a look at Carlos Sainz. He got in 3 laps, 38.4, 38.7. Charles Leclerc 38.6, so there or thereabouts, equal. Max, however, doing 39s in the Red Bull. Again, putting his head down and getting on with the long run, but the car obviously not generating anything like as much downforce as it should. 39.1 from Lewis Hamilton, so Red Bull Max Verstappen time. George Russell 39.4, didn't get a proper run as well, mainly because of the yellows. Now let's have a look at FP2, and you'll see what I mean about Ferrari. Look at Carlos Sainz there, how many laps he did. Really, really good run. But the quickest was George Russell in the Mercedes, 37.8. Now that's on the medium tyre, compared with, as we see, 37.4 for Fernando on the soft tyre in the first session. So that's an interesting one. Let's look what Fernando did on the medium, 37.9. Yeah, 37.9, 2 37.9s, and George a 37.8. So all on the medium apart from Lando. Again, as I say, out of sync. So very quick time from Fernando Alonso and George Russell. And what's Lewis Hamilton doing? 38.2, 39. Yeah, you know, there's a little bit of a difference there between George and Lewis, which will be annoying for Lewis, I suspect. Hopefully they've got very different setups and everything will be fine. But if you're Lewis and you're looking quite good in the car and you like the circuit, it's annoying to have your teammate doing that sort of time, I would have thought. Before we get on to Lando, let's look at the two Ferraris. I mean, Carlos Sainz's run, really good. 38.8, 38.6, 38.6, 38.2, 38.1. Then he let some temperature out of the tyres. Then 38.4, 38.8. More, another cool down lap, 38.5. Really good long run, good homework by Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc, a similarly good run, but there's a 39 there, there's a 39.4, there's a 39.2, there was some lockups. It was still not the Charles Leclerc that we've seen at his peak. There's something that is not quite the same for Charles. Everything's a little bit edgy, all his inputs look a little bit spikier than they used to be. Everything's a bit more desperate, is the only word to describe it, I think. And that's purely as a result, in my opinion, of Carlos finding this wonderful groove that he's in now. And Monza will not have done him any harm at all, getting that podium finish ahead of Charles as well. So let's look at what Max was doing. Not that quick, as I say, well, slow by Red Bull standards, very slow by Red Bull standards on the soft tyre. And then he puts on the medium tyre with fuel in the car, 38.2. So that's a sort of Lewis Hamilton time, 42.9, yeah, traffic or whatever, 38.3, 38.6, 38.6, 38.6, 39.2. So Red Bull need to be doing some serious stuff overnight. A long time since we've seen them in this situation. As I say, that's going to be as interesting to see how they react as how Charles reacts to what Carlos Sainz is doing. They're the two key elements, in my opinion, from Friday that we should be taking forward to Saturday and therefore looking forward to on Saturday. So I'll be back with here. It's very lots going on here at Singapore. Unbelievably, what's the word? Frenetic, I guess is the word. Just people getting around, the heat, everything going on. It's wonderful. Of course, you know, a night race. Wow, to see Formula One cars around this circuit at night, just amazing still after all these years. And equally, it looks as if it could be a race where Red Bull might get beaten. Early days to say. It's only a Friday, so I won't go that far. Let's see what happens tomorrow. See you then.